Emmerdale for Thursday the 31st of July teases that long-buried rivalries and ulterior motives are threatening to tear the fabric of the village apart, as Robert Sugden clings to the hope of a fresh start, while the shadow of betrayal looms around him. The dawn mist curled over the thatched roofs of Emmerdale, shrouding the village in a ghostly veil, as Robert Sugden watched the sun lift over fields still wet with dew. In his hands, he held a battered leather satchel, its worn edges a testament to the distance he had come and the burdens he carried. Only days before, he had arrived back in the valley with nothing but an uneasy determination to rebuild his life, to prove to himself, and to those who doubted him, that he could finally find redemption. Yet even as he stepped onto the gravel lane that led to Home Farm, Robert felt the weight of eyes upon him. Rumors had already begun to swirl, carried on the whispers of gossips at the Woolpack and the market stalls of Beckendale. "Isn't that Robert Sugden?" they murmured. "Back again, after all this time." For some, his return was a curiosity, for others, a provocation. None more determined to see him fail than his own cousin, John Sugden. Inside the ancient stone walls of Hall, John prowled like a wolf denied its prey. Ever since Robert's departure, driven from Emmerdale by scandal and the desperate violence of their final confrontation, John had believed the Sugden name could only endure if Robert was gone for good. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Robert's sudden reappearance upset the delicate balance of power that John had seized upon, the holdings at Home Farm, the loyalty of tenants and staff, even the fragile peace with rival farmers. John's disquiet deepened when, in the stillness of the night, he discovered critical information about Robert's past dealings. Buried in a stack of Home Farm's ledgers, he found references to clandestine meetings between Robert and Ray. Ray Crosby, the hard-edged gangster, who had once extorted money from the villagers. The very idea gave John fresh ammunition. If Robert had consorted with Ray, what else might he be hiding? And, more importantly, could John wield this knowledge to squash Robert's hopes once and for all? Meanwhile, Robert's fragile optimism was bolstered by an unlikely ally, Liam Kavanagh. Liam, still raw from the loss of his beloved Mina, whose betrayal and murder had left him haunted, had come to Robert seeking solidarity. He believed that Robert, no stranger to pain and prison walls, could understand the scars Mina had left upon his heart. On a brisk autumn morning, Liam's battered Land Rover rattled onto Home Farm's courtyard. Robert emerged from the barn to greet him, face pale with relief. "Robert," Liam said, voice tight, "thanks for seeing me." He clutched his coat against the chill, eyes full of unspoken grief. I needed someone who's been through it. The inside of a cell, the nights you spend replaying every mistake." Robert offered a gentle nod. "I know how it feels," he murmured. "In there, you lose track of time. You lose yourself." Liam's gaze flickered to the satchel at Robert's feet. "You really back for good?" Robert forced a smile. "I'm trying," he said. But before the words could settle, Liam's expression shifted. "John suggested I come talk," he added hastily, as though embarrassed. Robert stiffened, John's name a chill wind across his spine. "He did." Liam nodded. "He said we might help each other." Robert's jaw tightened. He had hoped to shield Liam from John's manipulations. But Liam was too trusting, just as he had been with Mina, so desperate for connection that he'd follow any lead. That afternoon, John slipped into the shadows of Home Farm's private office, his trench coat buttoned against the breeze. He had waited until Robert and Liam were immersed in conversation, over mugs of instant coffee, before slipping a small recording device beneath the doorjamb. From his vantage in the dusty corridor, John listened as Liam poured out his anguish, the nightmares, the panic attacks, the crushing loneliness. And then, in an unwitting moment of trust, Liam described how Robert had confided in him about meeting Ray Crosby. Liam didn't know the significance. He'd thought Robert was merely seeking business advice. But John's lips curled into a triumphant sneer, evidence at last that Robert was tangled in dealings with the underworld. With his pocket heavy with proof, John retreated to the stables to hatch his plan. If he could turn Ross Barton against Robert, Ross, who had long ago been betrayed by Robert's schemes, then he could ensure that the entire village closed ranks. Ross, scarred by the loss of his own relationships and the misery of stolen property, would be more than willing to help. John imagined the look of shock and rage on Robert's face when Ross confronted him in public, ensuring Robert's fractured reputation would never recover. Yet Robert, unaware of the trap closing around him, leaned on Liam for support. As twilight fell, the two men walked the riverside path that skirted the farm's boundary. Golden leaves drifted like embers in the air. Liam paused by an old oak. "You know, after Mina," he began, voice cracking. Robert looked at him with compassion. "What she did was unforgivable," he agreed. "But you're not defined by her betrayals." Liam exhaled, tears glimmering. "I just can't shake what happened. I keep thinking I was blind, so sure of her, just like I believed in this village." Robert placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. "You've every right to be angry. And scared. But you deserve better, better friends, better days." For a moment, Liam let himself believe in Robert's sincerity. "Thank you," he whispered. But Robert's own heart pounded with unease. He too feared the past creeping back, feared John's ruthless toys snapping shut. In the deepening dusk, Robert resolved to sever ties with Ray Crosby once and for all. He would confront the gangster, pay off his debts, and break free. Then, he would prove to everyone that he had changed. The next morning, Robert slipped into the dim back room of the Woolpack, where Ray's enforcer Mick sat counting wads of cash. Ray himself lounged against the bar, surveying the villagers with cold amusement. Robert's entrance silenced them. "Ray," he began, voice steady, "we need to settle our business." Ray's lip curled. "You've taken what you needed," he said. "What more do you want?" Robert unlocked his satchel, spreading crisp notes upon the table. "This covers everything. I'm done." Ray regarded the pile, then looked at Robert. "If you're really done, you shouldn't be here." His tone was warning, not offer. Robert met his gaze. "I'm done." Ray paused, then nodded slowly. "Good luck staying gone," he muttered. Robert gathered the money, heart pounding, not just with triumph, but with fear of what lay waiting at home farm. Meanwhile, John moved swiftly to enlist Ross Barton. John found him working on a delivery truck outside the post office. Ross, recovering from a broken heart of his own, was wary of new intrigues. But John played the wounded cousin, spinning a tale of Robert's secret alliance with Ray. "He's risking everything," John said, leaning on the truck's cab. "If this gets out, he'll drag all of us under." Ross's fists clenched. "That snake again," he spat. "He's no friend of mine." John placed a hand on Ross's arm. "Meet me at the bridge tonight," he urged. "I'll show you the proof." Ross's jaw set. "I'll be there." As evening fell, Robert returned to home farm, phone in hand to call Liam. He found the kitchen empty, the soft hum of radiators the only sound. He dialed Liam's number, no answer. Frowning, he pocketed the phone and poured himself a glass of water. Behind him, a shadow stretched into the doorway. He turned to find Liam, drawn back despite his wounds. "I couldn't wait," Liam said, voice thick. "I wanted to hear that you're really free of Ray." Relief flooded Robert's features. "I paid him off today. It's done." Liam's face lit with genuine happiness. "I'm proud of you," he said. Robert smiled, but it faltered when footsteps sounded on the gravel outside. He set down his glass. "Someone's here." Through the window he saw Ross marching up the drive, shoulders squared, anger radiating from him like heat haze. With a curse, Robert gestured for Liam to stay behind as he opened the door. Ross's eyes blazed. "Robert," he snarled. "You're a piece of work." Robert's heart sank. "Ross, what's this about?" Ross slapped a folder onto the doorstep. "I know about you and Ray. John showed me this." He turned the folder so Robert could glimpse the recording transcripts. "You've been feeding him info, selling him land rights. I should have known better." Robert's throat tightened. "It's not true." Ross scoffed. "Don't lie to me." As they squared off, a cold wind whipped down the drive, rustling Robert's hair. Inside, Liam watched in mounting dread. Whatever happened next would determine whether Robert's fragile chance at redemption would survive this fresh betrayal, or collapse under the weight of long-hidden sins. In the hush before confrontation, Emmerdale itself seemed to hold its breath. The ancient oaks lining the drive stood witness to a battle older than any of them, the struggle between hope and history, between the chance for a new beginning and the chains of the past. And as Robert braced himself for Ross's verdict, none could know whether this night would herald his final exile, or the first steps toward the life he longed to build. The ancient barn had been transformed into a riot of autumn color. Bales of hay formed makeshift seating, while ropes of twisted ivy and bunches of gold and crimson leaves hung from the low beams. Villagers gathered for the annual harvest auction, an event that combined friendly rivalry with high-spirited fundraising for the local school. This year, however, the true spectacle lay not in the bidding for Rosamond's prize-winning pumpkins or May's freshly baked jams, but in the drama that simmered behind the scenes. John Sugden had arrived early, crisp in tweed and affable to a fault, his charm masking the ruthless ambition burning in his dark eyes. As he greeted donors at the entrance, he shook hands with politeness that disguised the knife poised at Robert's back. In his coat pocket was a sheaf of damning documents, Ross Barton's signed witness statement, the CCTV stills, even the ledger entries proving Robert's cannabis swap. All he needed was the right moment, the stage of the harvest auction, to unleash them on Emmerdale and watch Robert's world collapse. Across the barn, Robert Sugden hovered near the entrance, flanked by his closest allies. Laura Sugden, fierce in her loyalty and determination, Liam Kavanagh, still haunted but steadfast, Ross Barton, who wore his regret like a scarlet letter, and Mackenzie Boyd, whose wariness had softened into reluctant faith. Carla and Gary, though more accustomed to mending hearts than raising livestock, hovered by the refreshment table, ready to lend both moral and practical support. Robert drew a shaking breath. "Are you sure this is the right time?" he whispered to Ross. Ross, face drawn, nodded. "John's about to make his speech. Once he's distracted by the applause, I'll stand and tell the truth." Liam's grip on Robert's arm was firm. "We're with you," he said. Laura gave her brother a small, fierce smile. "You've carried this alone for too long. Let them see who he really is." Mackenzie perched on a hay bale, scanning the crowd. "I've got Carla on the phones," she said quietly. "She's arranged for Dev and Bernie to arrive at any second as backup. Aaron Dingle's on his way, too, he'll be here by halftime." Robert's heart leapt. Aaron's return had been rumored, but no one had seen him on the village's winding lanes all day. If he arrived in time, John's carefully laid trap might collapse. At the far end of the barn, John stepped up onto a low dais. He tapped the microphone, and the barn fell to respectful hush. "Thank you all," he began, smooth and genial, "for supporting our harvest festival. It's events like these that remind us of Emmerdale's heart, our ability to come together, share what we have, and look after one another." Light applause rose. Robert felt a cold twist in his stomach. He recalled the day John had exiled him. The shouted accusations, the broken windows of Home Farm stables, the final shove that had sent him out of the village. Now, 3 years later, John stood as the community's champion, while Robert remained the unwelcome prodigal. He clenched his fists. John continued, "This year, I'd like to introduce a very special item for auction. It's not a prize-winning apple, or a jar of chutney, but a chance, an opportunity for someone to step up and ensure that our village farms remain in the hands of those who love them." He lifted the folder. "You see, it has come to my attention that certain, questionable dealings have taken place right under our noses. I believe the time has come for full transparency." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Liam swallowed, glancing at Ross, whose fingers tightened around his signed statement. Laura planted a hand on Robert's back. "Stay calm," she urged. John's lips curved in victory. "I refer, of course, to his own cousin, Mr. Robert Sugden." He flipped open the folder and revealed the CCTV still, a hooded figure placing the small bag of cannabis into Robert's coat pocket. "And I have here indisputable proof that Mr. Sugden has been trafficking illegal substances through this village, selling them to known criminals, putting lives at risk." Gasps echoed. Mackenzie rose to her feet, but Ross beat her to it. Standing on the hay bale, Ross called out, voice booming, "That's a lie." The crowd shifted, startled by the interruption. John's eyes narrowed. "Ross Barton, you defend the man who cheated you, sold you out, and blamed you for his crimes." Ross's face was pale but resolved. "He did. I have here my signed witness statement, admitting I was innocent, and proof that John Sugden orchestrated the whole thing." John's smile vanished. "You'd accuse me," he sneered. "You." Before he could finish, Liam and Laura stepped forward, clutching tablets that displayed the bank transfer logs of Robert's payments to Ray Crosby, showing the money flow to Ray, and then back to Home Farm's account. The trail John had attempted to reverse engineer. Carla pressed through the throng with Gary and Dev at her side, each holding stacks of paper, emails between John and corrupt officials, recorded phone calls in which John had suggested framing Robert, invoices for private detectives hired to spy on Home Farm. A stunned silence descended. John's face paled, the veneer of respectability cracking. "Where did you get those?" he hissed. "Your own records," Dev answered coldly. "Everything you needed to bring down Robert, everything you used to manipulate our community, has been laid bare." Bernie joined, handing the papers to the village schoolteacher, who began reading out key excerpts. John's instructions to spy on Robert, his admission that only Robert's removal could secure Home Farm's future, his threats to anyone who dared support the prodigal son. The hush broke into shouts, "Shame! Get him out! Arrest him!" As several villagers moved to block John's exit, Ross lifted his witness statement, voice steady, "And here is Ross Barton's sworn testimony that John paid me to lie, to defame Robert." He thrust the paper into John's chest. John stumbled back, eyes wild. Then, from the doorway, a familiar roar of engine broke through the cacophony. Aaron Dingle strode into the barn, mud-caked boots and wind-blown hair, surveying the scene with the look of a man who had come home to fight for what was his. He flashed his trademark grin, wry, fearless, and pushed through the crowd to stand beside Robert. "Looks like you've got it under control," Aaron called out, voice rich with irony. The villagers turned, relief washing over their faces. Among them, Mackenzie allowed herself a small, incredulous laugh. "Aaron," she exclaimed. John snarled. "You," he spat at Aaron. "This isn't your fight." Aaron's grin turned ice cold. "Wrong. It is now." He stepped between John and the exit. "You've spent years lying, cheating, stealing from your own blood. Tonight, that ends." He turned to Robert. "Let's finish this." With that, Aaron produced a folder of his own, photographs, and recordings John had made threatening Aaron's family if he dared return. Aaron laid them on a hay bale. Blackmail doesn't work when the whole world knows about it. The villagers pressed forward, forming a protective ring around Robert and Aaron. John's jaw tightened. In that moment, he realized he had lost. Not just his cousins and his community, but also the very soul of Emmerdale. His hands went to his pockets, as if searching for a weapon. Instead, he found nothing but incriminating evidence. He heard footsteps behind him, a young farmer he'd bullied, a schoolteacher, whose grant he'd withheld, a laborer he'd fired unjustly, all closing in. John Sugden, the schoolteacher called, voice trembling with righteous anger, "You're done here." A hush rippled through the barn, and then a single cheer rose, swelling into applause. Robert exhaled, relief and astonishment mingling on his face. Later, under strings of fairy lights that transformed the crooked barn into a place of wonder once more, the villagers gathered for a quieter celebration. Robert sat with Liam, Ross, and Laura at a chipped wood table, sharing a slice of Appleby's famous toffee apple cake. Aaron towered behind them, arms crossed, a proud sentinel. Carla and Gary circulated with mugs of cider, toasts bubbling on every lip. John Sugden had slunk off into the night, his reputation in tatters and legal proceedings already underway. The Dingle patriarch, Paddy Dingle, had quietly put in a call to the Trading Standards Office, ensuring that John would face scrutiny far beyond the village walls. With John's machinations exposed, Robert's name was cleared, and Home Farm, at long last, could be his to steward with honesty. Liam nudged Robert. "You did it," he said, voice soft but genuine. Robert smiled, eyes misty. "We did it." Ross raised his glass. "To family." Laura added, "To truth." They clinked mugs. In the distance, the first notes of a fiddle drifted from the bar, where a group of neighbors had banded together for an impromptu ceilidh. Laughter and dancing filled the barn's rafters, a testament to Emmerdale's resilience and unity. Even Mackenzie, who had begun the evening suspicious, allowed herself to be swept into the circle, her smile bright and unguarded. As the festivities waned and the last guests drifted home, Aaron lingered on the threshing floor with Robert. Moonlight poured through gaps in the barn walls, painting them in silver. Robert looked up at Aaron. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For everything." Aaron shrugged, a half-smile playing on his lips. "That's what family does. But you've got work to do, healing, rebuilding, and maybe, one day, forgiving where it's due." He glanced toward Home Farm's illuminated windows. "You ready?" Robert nodded, determination shining through fatigue. "More than ever." He turned back to the barn's empty echoes and imagined dawn breaking over his fields he would now tend with integrity, generosity, and a new sense of purpose. Behind the barn, nestled against the dark line of moorland, the outline of Home Farm stood silent guard. In the quiet that followed, Emmerdale itself exhaled, as though closing one agonizing chapter and turning the page to another. One where hope, honesty, and hard work might finally conquer history's shadows. But in a village where every secret eventually unfurls, the Sugden saga is never truly finished. As Aaron and Robert returned toward the farmhouse, shoulders squared against the night air, a distant figure watched from the edge of the tree line. Someone whom John had confided in, someone driven by old loyalties and new vendettas. The future held more twists, reckonings with bygone debts, the question of John's ultimate fate, and the return of other ghosts from Emmerdale's past. For now, though, the harvest barn stood empty, its hay splintered by dancing feet, its rafters echoing with the laughter of a community that had weathered betrayal and found each other stronger on the other side. And as the moon dipped behind the rolling hills, Emmerdale slept in peace, knowing that tomorrow, new challenges would come, but so too would the courage to face them.